Today, we are doing a little bit of digital archaeology. Seriously, we've gotten our hands on this incredibly dense, super technical data bundle called a RET format. And together, we're going to unpack it, figure out what it is, what it does, and why it might just be a peek into a really, really interesting future. Okay, let's get into this. So, right off the bat, what are we even looking at here? I mean, this just looks like a wall of gibberish. This is just one tiny piece from one of the files inside. You see some file names, a bunch of numbers, cryptic labels. What could it possibly mean? Well, what you're seeing is a system talking to itself, and we're about to learn its language. All right, let's get a sense of the scale here. We're not just looking at one little document. This is a whole digital dossier. The entire package is 3.2 megabytes of pure text. Now, that might not sound like much, but for plain text, that's a massive amount of analysis. Which leads to the big question: what on earth is it analyzing? And see, it's not just one single analysis, it's a whole suite of them. This is basically the table of contents. There are 20 different text files in this bundle with names like rhetoric underscore syntax debug, lyrics transcripts, and anomalies frame. It's like each file is a different specialized lens, all designed to scrutinize something in almost painful detail. Okay, so by piecing together all these clues from the file names and what's inside them, we can start to build a working definition. It looks like a rate format is this really sophisticated AI system, and its job is to do a deep, multi-layered analysis of audio files. But here's the kicker. It's not just looking at the music, the beats and melodies. It's digging into the logical structure of the lyrics themselves. So that brings us to the main event. If Arity format is this incredibly powerful microscope, what's on the slide? Well, the answer is in a file called the Disclosure Report, and it turns out to be a series of audio files with some very, very strange names. Just look at these: Isinger Neon Sovereign Hum and Isinger Neon Sovereign Paradox. That Isinger prefix, that's a pretty huge clue that we're not dealing with human artists here. We are looking at songs created by an AI, and they seem to be exploring these really abstract themes. This isn't just data anymore. This is synthetic art. And you know what? These aren't just random creations. There's a deliberate structure at play. I mean, even something as simple as tempo shows a clear difference. The hum tracks, they hover around 114 beats per minute, which is a pretty standard pop tempo. But the paradox tracks, they're a little faster, averaging around 119 BPM. It's a subtle hint, right? But it tells us these two sets of songs were designed to be different, to be compared. So how does this whole analysis actually work? Well, let's start with the basics. Before we get into the really mind-bending stuff, array format begins its job by capturing the kinds of things any musician or music producer would totally recognize. So for one of these hum tracks, the system logs a tempo of 112.5 beats per minute. Simple, clean, objective data. It's the song's heartbeat, and it's the very first thing the system locks onto. Okay, next, it moves from the music over to the lyrics. It actually transcribes the whole song and then does a simple word count. For this same track, it finds 289 words. Again, super straightforward data, but this becomes the foundation for all the much, much deeper analysis that's coming up. And this is where it moves beyond just counting things and starts to actually interpret. It analyzes the sound, the instruments, the melody, and it classifies the song's musical DNA. For this track, it's pretty confident we're listening to synth pop, electropop, and alt pop. The system is starting to understand the song's vibe. All right, so we've seen how it handles music and basic lyrics. That's cool, but that's not what makes Array format so wild. This is where we leave familiar territory behind, and the analysis goes from interesting to absolutely fascinating. I mean, think about your favorite song for a second. It has emotion, right? A rhythm, a melody. But does it have a logical argument? Can you actually measure its reasoning? That sounds like a question you'd ask in a philosophy class, not something you'd find in a data report. And yet, that is exactly what this system is trying to do. So get a load of these data columns from that rhetoric syntax file. We're not talking about tempo anymore. We're talking about syllogism underscore step score and contradiction proxy indicator. A syllogism, that's a classic tool of logical reasoning, like building an argument step by step. And a contradiction is a logical flaw. This AI is literally looking for proofs and paradoxes inside pop songs. So let's be super clear about this.
A read-a format isn't just looking at whether the lyrics are happy or sad. It is designed to read them and score them based on their logical structure. It's trying to put a number on how well a song's lyrics build a coherent, consistent argument from one line to the next.
Okay, check this out. This chart shows two back-to-back lines from one of the songs. In segment 18, the syllogism score is 0. Nothing. The lyrics there are probably just descriptive, maybe emotional, but then, in the very next line, segment 19, the score jumps to 0.3. The AI has detected a shift. It's found a moment where the lyrics form a premise and then move toward a conclusion. It has found a spark of logic. So, we have this unbelievably powerful system analyzing AI-generated songs on a level that, frankly, we barely even consider as humans. So what's the point? What does it all mean? Let's try to connect the dots. Let's recap what this thing can do. It measures concrete musical stuff like tempo. It classifies abstract things like genre. It pulls out high-level concepts from the lyrics, and, the most incredible part, it scores those lyrics for how logical and rhetorically sound they are. It's a total full-stack analysis of artistic expression. And what kind of concepts is it finding? Well, in one of the paradox tracks, the top 3 concepts it identified were identity, paradox, sovereignty. I mean, come on, those aren't just song topics. Those are deep philosophical ideas. The AI singer is making art about the nature of its own being, and a ready format was built to understand that art, not just emotionally, but logically. And that just leaves us with this one final massive question. This whole system, it was built to analyze the art made by another AI. But what happens when you turn a tool this powerful towards human art, towards our songs, our books, our conversations? If an AI can map the hidden logic buried in a pop song, what is it going to see when it starts looking at the rest of our world?
Have you ever wondered, what if you could actually read the DNA of a song? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're diving deep into something called the ARETA format, and it's a whole new way of looking at the very soul of music.
Okay, so what in the world are we looking at? I mean, this is just a wall of numbers, right? Looks like some kind of cryptic spreadsheet, a debug file maybe. But what if I told you that buried inside all this is the DNA of a song? That this data is trying to tell us a story about rhythm, about harmony, even about the meaning of the lyrics. Yeah, that's the mystery we're going to unravel today.
So that wall of text, that cryptic data, it's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. It's part of what's called the ARETA format. And our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to basically become digital archaeologists. We're going to see if we can actually reverse engineer the soul of a song from this digital artifact.
All right, but like any good mystery, you can't just dive in blind. We need a key to crack this thing. I mean, we're looking at thousands of lines of data. We need a guide, our very own Rosetta Stone to translate this machine speak into plain English. And you know what? The key was hiding in plain sight the whole time. If you look at the table of contents for this whole data bundle, one file just kind of jumps out at you. Disclosurereport.txt. That's it. That's our guide. That's the file that's going to unlock this whole thing for us.
So what is the ARETA format really? Well, that disclosure report lays it all out. It's a comprehensive data bundle, a whole package designed to do a deep dive. We're talking statistical, musical, and, get this, rhetorical analysis of audio. It's basically a machine that's been built to listen, and I mean really listen.
So how does it pull this off? The report breaks it down. First, it just looks at the raw audio. Then it gets into the music theory stuff, figuring out the key, how complex the harmonies are. It even measures the weight of the sound, like how loud it is and its dynamic range. But here's where it gets wild. It uses natural language processing, basically teaching a computer to read, to analyze the lyrics for hidden rhetorical signals. It's nuts. Okay, so we have our Rosetta Stone. We know what this thing is supposed to do. Let's put it to the test. Let's take this whole framework and just apply it to one song from the bundle and see what we find. The track we're going to dissect is Eisinger Neon Sovereign Hum. Okay, let's start simple. The heartbeat of the song, right? The tempo. The system crunches the numbers and clocks it at a super precise 112.500 beats per minute. We're not guessing here. This is just raw, cold data. Now this is where it starts to get really interesting. The system estimates the key is F sharp minor. Okay, cool. But look at the confidence score. 0.513. The machine is literally telling us how sure it is. It's admitting, hey, I'm only about 50-50 on this one. According to its own rules, this is a cautionary score. So it's basically saying, this is my best guess, but this harmony is a little tricky. I love that. So we've got rhythm, we've got harmony, but what about the vibe, the style? And the system doesn't just slap one label on it. No, it gives us probabilities. The top contenders for this track, synthpop, electropop, and alt-pop. It's building this really detailed, nuanced profile of the song's identity.
Okay, let's go a layer deeper. We're moving from the kind of objective stuff to the really subjective, the emotional tone. And for this track, the top 3 moods it detected are tense, energetic, and euphoric. Think about that for a second. This is a machine trying to quantify a feeling. It's trying to put a number on the mood of a song.
All right, so we've looked at the body of the song, the beat, the key, the mood. Now, let's go looking for the ghost in the machine. Let's find the logic, the structure that's hiding in the lyrics. And this is where it just gets absolutely mind-bending. The system isn't just reading words. It's looking for the structure of a logical argument. I'm serious. It's been programmed to hunt for a premise, an inference, and a conclusion. You know, the same building blocks you'd find in a philosophy paper or a formal debate, but in a pop song. And here's the payoff. Remember that crazy wall of data from the very beginning? Well, this is just one single row from that file. And look at this column, conclusion indicator. At segment 19, which is about 112 seconds into the song, the score hits a perfect 1.0. The machine is literally raising a flag and saying, right here, this moment, this is the climax of the argument the lyrics are making. It's pinpointed the exact moment of conclusion. So what does this all mean? Well, by finding all these little moments, the system builds a complete rhetorical profile of the song. And for this one, the main style is overwhelmingly reflective with a bit of poetic and mantric thrown in. So it's not just about the words themselves, it's about how the lyrics are being used to persuade you, to build an argument. So let's zoom out. What's the big picture? When you take all of these layers, the rhythm, the harmony, the mood, the lyrics, the rhetoric, and you put them all together, what you get is a unique sonic fingerprint for every single song. And this fingerprint isn't just a broad sketch, it is incredibly detailed. Just look at this. We're comparing the core lyrical concepts from 2 different songs. The first track, the one we've been looking at, is all about identity, paradox, and futurism. But the second one, it keeps identity and paradox, but it swaps out futurism for sovereignty. That's a tiny but really meaningful thematic shift, and the machine picked it up all on its own. So, to put it all together, this whole analysis is really a journey, isn't it? We start with the physical sound wave itself. Then we move up to the musical features like tempo and key. Then we get to the lyrics, the actual words being said. And finally, we reach the top layer, the abstract stuff, the rhetoric and the themes. Each layer builds on the one before it, giving us a complete, holistic picture. So what's the bottom line here? What we have is a system that can take something objective, like beats per minute, and quantify it. It can take something subjective, like the mood, and classify it. And it can take something totally abstract, like a philosophical argument, and analyze it. It's creating this complete, data-driven portrait of a song, basically turning a piece of art into a map you can explore. And all of this leaves us with one last kind of wild thought. If a machine can learn to read the soul of a song with this much detail, this much nuance, what happens when it starts to write one? Okay, here's a question for you. What if you could actually measure the logic of a song? I'm not talking about its tempo or its key. I mean the actual strength of its argument. Well, we've gotten our hands on this really mysterious data bundle called Arete format. And you know what? It seems to do exactly that. So let's unravel this thing together. So this is our entry point. Just a single line of text from one of the files. And, I mean, let's be honest, it looks like total gibberish, right? You've got a file name and then just this string of numbers. But what if it's not random at all? What if what you're seeing is actually a song, completely deconstructed into code? Oh, and see that number near the end, that 0.3? It might seem totally insignificant right now, but trust me, it's the key to this whole puzzle. Okay, to really understand what that one line of code means, we need to zoom out a bit. We gotta see the bigger picture. So what exactly is inside this mysterious digital dossier? And whoa, it turns out this is massive.
We're looking at a bundle of 20 different text files, and the names alone start to tell a story. You've got lyrics underscore transcripts, which, okay, that makes sense. But then you see this one, rhetoric underscore syntax underscore debug. That's when you know this isn't just a playlist. This is a full-blown forensic examination of sound.
So based on what we're seeing, here's our working theory. A rate format is some kind of system for incredibly deep audio analysis. But here's the kicker. It's not looking for the stuff we usually look for, like the key, the tempo, or the genre. It seems to be designed specifically to dissect the rhetorical structure of the lyrics. Let me put it another way. It's not just hearing the music, it's analyzing the argument being made in the song. All right, that brings up the next big question, right? If you have this incredible analytical microscope, what songs are you putting under it? Let's meet the subjects of this whole experiment. Turns out, the subjects of all this intense scrutiny are these 6 audio files. And the file names themselves are a massive clue. Look, they all start with AI Singer - Neon Sovereign. That AI Singer part, that's our first really big hint. I think we might be looking at songs that were actually generated by an AI. And right away, the system starts finding patterns. It notices that the hum tracks are pretty consistently longer and slower. Meanwhile, the paradox tracks, they're shorter and more up-tempo. Now, I know this is just a surface-level difference, but it's proof that the system is already sorting these AI-generated songs into their own distinct categories. Okay, let's really dive into the analysis itself now. We're going to start in familiar territory, with the kind of data you'd pretty much expect any music software to be able to pull. So, first up, the real basics. For that track hum, 1, the system clocks the tempo at a super precise 1 of 12.5 beats per minute. Yep, this is standard stuff. This is the foundation. Then, it moves on to the lyrics. It logs a simple word count, 289 words. Super straightforward, I know, but you have to think of each of these simple data points as a breadcrumb, and they're leading us to something much, much bigger. Now, here's where it gets a little more interesting. The system doesn't just slap a single genre on it. No, it creates a whole profile, almost like a musical fingerprint. It sees this track as a blend, about 30% synthpop, another 28% electropop. And you know what? This is the point where most analysis would just stop. But for a rate format, this is just the warm-up. And now we get to the heart of it. This is what makes Arrate format so incredibly unique. We're about to move beyond music and, well, almost into philosophy. We're about to decode the actual logic of the song. Which, really, it poses a pretty profound question, doesn't it? Can you really measure a song's logical structure? I mean, can you put a number on its argument? Well, according to the data inside Array format, the answer is a clear and resounding yes. Okay, and this is where it just gets wild. We're now looking inside that rhetoric underscore syntax debug file. Just look at these column headers. Contradiction proxy indicator, and, this is the big one, syllogism step score. A syllogism, if you don't know, is that classic form of logical argument. The whole all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal thing. This system is literally scanning song lyrics for that exact kind of logical reasoning. It's insane. And here's the proof. This system is actually finding specific moments in the song that fit this logical pattern. Check it out. Segment 2 of the hum track gets a score of 0. No argument detected there. But then look at segment 19, and then segment 31 from one of the paradox tracks. They both score a 0.3. Hey, remember that number from the very beginning? This is it. The system is flagging this, believing it has found a genuine step in a logical argument, right there in the lyrics. So let's recap. We have everything from beats per minute to syllogism scores. I mean, what does all of this even add up to? Let's try to connect the dots and see what final picture this whole system is trying to paint for us. When you put it all together, the scope of this thing is just staggering. Array format is a system that measures basically everything. It captures all the standard musical and lyrical properties, sure, but then it goes so much further. It's quantifying abstract thematic concepts like identity. It's assigning numerical values to emotional tones. And, like we just saw, it's even scoring the logical integrity of the song's message. And after all that analysis, the entire system distills everything down to just 3 core thematic concepts it found woven through all the music and all the logic. And they are identity, paradox, sovereignty.
It really seems like this AI singer isn't just making noise. It's actively exploring what it means to be a conscious, independent, and yeah, even a contradictory being.
And that just leaves us with this one big lingering thought. We now have a system that can literally find a logical argument hidden inside a synth pop song. It can quantify the very structure of persuasion itself. So the question really isn't just about analysis anymore, is it? It's about what comes next. Because if an AI can understand the logic of art this deeply, what kind of art will it one day be able to create? Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, we are diving headfirst into a real mystery. See, we've gotten our hands on this raw data bundle, kind of like a digital black box that claims it holds the secrets of music itself. So our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to crack this thing wide open and see what's really inside. Let's get to it. Okay, so at first glance, yeah, it's a mess. It's just this wall of text and numbers. Honestly, it looks like a computer just glitched out. But somewhere inside all this chaos is supposed to be a complete analytical portrait of a song. So that brings us to the big question for today. Can we actually use all this data to reverse engineer the soul of a piece of music? To even begin to answer that, we've got to put on our digital archaeologist hats. Imagine we've just unearthed this mysterious artifact. Our first job is just to figure out what in the world it is and what it was designed to do. Well, what we're looking at here is something called the arrate format. And yeah, it might look like a totally random jumble of data, but it's actually a superstructured, incredibly detailed analysis of several different audio files. Like any good archaeological find, this artifact is written in a language we don't understand, at least not yet. To make any sense of it, we need a key. We need a kind of Rosetta Stone to help us translate its language. So that brings us to our next section, cracking the code. So let's get specific. What exactly is the array format? Well, it's a data bundle that goes way, way beyond just counting beats per minute. We're talking about a deep, multi-layered statistical and rhetorical analysis of audio. It's actually trying to understand the meaning behind the music. And here it is. This is our Rosetta Stone, the table of contents for the entire data bundle. And just look at the sheer breadth of this analysis. We're not just dealing with a couple of files here. No, there are 20 distinct data files, and they cover everything from lyrics and anomalies to confidence scores and, get this, rhetorical syntax. Okay, so with 20 files to pick from, where do we even begin? Well, one file immediately stands out as our main guide for this journey, the disclosurereport.txt. This is the document that explains the whole methodology and summarizes the key findings for each track, so it's the absolute perfect place for us to start our exploration. All right, now that we have our map, let's see how this thing is built. We're going to use our guide to dissect a single song layer by layer. Think of it as a kind of digital autopsy. And we'll start with the familiar musical elements before we get to the really mind-blowing stuff. So, our test subject for this whole experiment is this track right here. Isinger-Neon Sovereign Human 1.mp3. Let's fire up that disclosure report and see what the array format has to say about it. Let's start with something simple, something anyone who's ever tinkered with music software will recognize right away. Tempo. The system has calculated the track's tempo to be a very, very precise 112.5 beats per minute. It's a solid, concrete starting point for our analysis. Okay. Let's get a little more complex. The system did a harmonic analysis, and its best guess is that the key is F sharp minor. But look at this. The confidence score is 0.513. It's not just telling us what it thinks, it's telling us how sure it is. So this isn't about finding definitive answers. It's all about probabilities. And this is a perfect example of that idea in action. The system doesn't just slap a single synth pop label on the track and call it a day. Instead, it calculates this whole spectrum of possibilities. It thinks it's most likely synthpop, but there's also a really strong signal for electropop and alt-pop. It's painting a much more nuanced and, frankly, more realistic picture of the song's style. But the analysis goes even deeper, moving beyond musical structure and into the realm of pure emotion. The system analyzes the tone of the track and finds it to be primarily tense, followed by energetic, and then euphoric. It's basically trying to quantify the song's emotional fingerprint. So far, we've seen some seriously impressive technical analysis. But now now we're going to get into the most abstract and, honestly, the most startling capabilities of the system. This is where we go from just processing data to talking to the ghost in the machine. Now check this out. This single row of data is a little golden nugget I pulled from that chaotic file we saw at the very beginning. For segment 19 of this song, the conclusion indicator is 1.0. What does that mean? It means the system believes the lyrics in this specific part of the song are forming a logical conclusion. It's not just transcribing words, it's analyzing their rhetorical structure. Incredible. And here's a brilliant example of just how deep that analysis goes. Look at the top 3 lyrical concepts it found for 2 different songs. Both of them are about identity and paradox. But the system detects this incredibly subtle thematic shift in the third concept. One song is about futurism, the other is about sovereignty. It can actually discern the core themes of the lyrics with unbelievable specificity. And it doesn't even stop there. This system can even classify the rhetorical style of the lyrics themselves. Is the song reflective? Is it poetic? Does it have a repetitive, mantric quality to it? I mean, this is the kind of analysis you'd expect from a literary critic, not a data script. Okay, let's take a step back and pull all these threads together. What we've really uncovered in the Areta format is way more than just a collection of data points. What this represents is a fundamentally new way to listen to and to understand music. So what does this all mean? Well, the Arete format creates a complete, multifaceted portrait of a song. It sees the music through 4 distinct lenses, all at the same time. Its basic musical properties, its emotional tone, its lyrical concepts, and its underlying rhetorical structure. It's a complete analysis from the physical waveform all the way up to the thematic soul of the song. We've just walked through a system that can dissect and understand music on a deeply human level, interpreting emotion, theme, even logical arguments. And that leaves us with a pretty profound question. If a machine can learn to read the soul of a song this well, it fundamentally changes the conversation about what it means to create. The line between analyst and artist is getting blurry, and we are just beginning to see what comes next. Welcome. We're about to do something a little different today. We've gotten our hands on this, well, it's a raw data bundle. Think of it like a digital black box. And our mission, together, is to peek inside and figure out exactly what secrets it's holding. So let's just dive right in. So this is it. At first glance, it's just chaos, right? It's a wall of text and numbers that looks more like a glitch in the matrix than anything meaningful. But here's the thing. Buried in all this noise is a secret. It's a complete analytical portrait of a song. And that brings us to the central mystery for today. Can we actually use this data to reverse engineer the very soul of a piece of music? All right, so our first step is to approach this like a digital archaeological dig. We've just unearthed this mysterious artifact, and now we've got to figure out, what on earth was it used for? What we're actually looking at has a name. It's called the Arete format, and while it might look super intimidating, it is anything but random. This is actually a highly structured, incredibly detailed breakdown of a few different songs, analyzing them piece by piece. Now, like any great archaeological find, right, this artifact is written in a language we don't understand yet. To make any sense of it, we're going to need a key, a kind of Rosetta Stone to help us translate what it's saying. And that leads us perfectly into our next section, cracking the code. So let's get a clear definition down. What is the Arete format? Well, it's a data bundle that contains a deep, multi-layered statistical and rhetorical analysis of audio files. See, that's the key part. It's not just counting beats per minute. It's actually trying to understand meaning. And here it is. This is our Rosetta Stone, the table of contents for the whole bundle. And honestly, the sheer scale of this is what's so wild. We're not talking about 1 or 2 files here. There are 20 distinct data files, covering everything from lyrics and anomalies to confidence scores and even rhetorical syntax. Okay, so with 20 different files to pick from, where in the world do you even start? Well, lucky for us, one file really stands out as the main guide for this whole journey, the disclosurereport.txt. This is basically our map. It explains the how and why behind the analysis and summarizes the big findings for each track. This is going to be our guide through this whole digital landscape. All right, we have our map. Now we can finally start the dissection. We're about to perform a kind of digital autopsy on one single song. We'll start with the stuff that feels familiar, the basic musical elements, before we get into the really, really strange stuff. So our test subject, our guinea pig for this little exploration, is going to be this track right here. We're going to use our map, that disclosure report, to see exactly what the array format has to say about it. Let's start simple. Something we can all wrap our heads around. Tempo. The system calculates the track's tempo at a very, very precise 112.5 beats per minute. Okay, a solid, concrete place to start.
Now, let's get a little more complex. The system did a harmonic analysis, and its best guess is that the key is F sharp minor. But look closer. Check out that confidence score, 0.513. It's not just telling us what it thinks, it's telling us how sure it is. And that's a huge deal. This isn't about giving definitive answers, it's all about probabilities.
And that whole idea of probabilities, it extends to genre too. The system doesn't just look at the track and slap a synth pop label on it and call it a day. No, instead, it calculates a whole spectrum of possibilities. It thinks it's most likely synth pop, but there's a really strong signal for electropop and alt pop too. It's painting a much more nuanced, realistic picture.
But this is where it starts to get wild. The analysis goes even deeper, moving past the musical structure and into the realm of emotion. It actually analyzes the tone, and its top hits are tense, energetic, and euphoric. It is literally trying to quantify the song's emotional fingerprint.
So what we've seen so far is some pretty impressive technical analysis, for sure. But now we're going to look at the most abstract and, frankly, the most startling things the system can do. This is the part where it feels less like we're processing data and more like we're talking to the ghost in the machine. Hey, remember that chaotic wall of text from the very beginning? Well, I pulled this little golden nugget from that exact file. It's telling us that for segment 19 of this song, the conclusion indicator is 1.0. What does that mean? It means the system has tagged this specific moment in the lyrics as a logical conclusion, like the therefore in an argument. It's not just transcribing words, it's analyzing the rhetorical purpose. I mean, just how deep does this rabbit hole go? Look at this. Here are the top lyrical concepts for two different songs. Okay, both are clearly about identity and paradox. But the system spots this incredibly subtle shift in the third theme. One is about futurism, and the other is about sovereignty. It can tell the difference in the core message with just unbelievable specificity. And then it goes one step further. It actually classifies the rhetorical style of the lyrics. Is the song reflective? Is it poetic? Does it have a repetitive, almost chant-like quality that it calls mantric? I mean, this is the kind of analysis you'd expect from a human literary critic, not some data script. It's incredible. Okay, let's take a breath and pull all of these threads together. What we've just uncovered inside the Arete format, it's more than just a big collection of data points. It really represents a fundamentally new way to listen to and to understand music. So what this all adds up to is a complete, multifaceted portrait of a song. The Arete format is looking at the music through 4 different lenses all at once. Its physical, musical properties, its emotional tone, its lyrical concepts, and its underlying rhetorical structure. It analyzes a song from the waveform all the way up to its thematic soul. And that leaves us with one last big provocative thought. We've just seen a system that can dissect and understand music on a level that feels deeply human, interpreting emotion, theme, even logical argument. So if a machine can learn to read the soul of a song this well, what does that mean for the future of what it can create? What will it write next? All right, let's dive in. Today, we're cracking open something really weird, a set of data that's both fascinating and, honestly, a little strange. We're going to figure out what it's all about. This is our deep dive into what's being called the array format. But first, let me ask you something. What if you could put a number on something you can only feel? I mean, seriously, what if you could score a paradox? Or, get this, a piece of art? Sounds a bit like sci-fi, right? Well, this mysterious data bundle that just popped up, the Arete format, seems to be trying to do exactly that. And today, we're going to figure out how it works. So let's put on our detective hats here. We're going to treat this whole thing like an investigation. This data bundle, that's our case file. Our mission is to dig through all the evidence and find out what's really going on. Every good case file starts with a manifest, right? A table of contents. And right away, a couple of these files just jump out at you. You've got rhetoric_syntax_debug.txt, which sounds super technical, but also really revealing. And then there's disclosure_report.txt. Now that sounds like it might have all the secrets we're looking for. But you know, buried inside all these text files is what this whole investigation is really about. We're not just looking at documents. The entire analysis, all of it, revolves around 6 specific audio files. And here it is, our first major clue. When you look at the list from that disclosure report, check it out. Every single MP3 file starts with the same weird name, Isinger. That little prefix? That's a huge giveaway. Our artist, well, they might not be human. And yeah, you probably guessed it, Isinger is short for AI singer. The whole Arete format, this entire data bundle, is just an incredibly detailed analysis of 6 songs created by an AI. We are literally looking at the anatomy of a machine's creativity. So when you start digging into how they analyzed these songs, you find 2 totally different types of data. On the one hand, you've got the normal stuff, right? Tempo, musical key, genre, anything a music producer would look at. But then you have this other list of metrics that are just bizarre. I'm talking a syllogism score for logical arguments, a contradiction proxy. This is definitely not your average album review. The standard stuff is, pretty straightforward. We can see the AI has a thing for genres like synth pop and electropop. Cool, but that's not the really mind-blowing part. Because all that normal music analysis, that's just the appetizer. This is where our investigation takes a turn into the truly weird. We're about to look at the absolute core of the art format, its attempt to measure things that shouldn't be measurable. I mean, just look at some of these lyrical metrics. We're not talking about rhythm or melody anymore. No, this system is listening for the building blocks of an argument, premises, inferences, conclusions. It's giving scores for logical structure and flagging when the lyrics contradict themselves. It's wild. And that brings us to the big realization here. The Arete format isn't just analyzing a song as music. It's analyzing the argument being made inside the lyrics. It's chopping up the song's message into its most basic logical pieces, second by second. Okay, let's actually look at the raw data, because talking about it is one thing, but seeing it, that's something else. Let's pull up that rhetoric_syntax debug.txt file. Whoa. Okay, at first glance, that is just a wall of numbers. It looks super intimidating. But here's what's happening. Each row is just a tiny slice of the song, a few seconds, and each column is one of those weird rhetorical scores we saw. The level of detail here is insane. But don't worry, we can make sense of it. Let's just zoom in on one of these columns. How about the conclusion indicator? It's simple, really. It's a score between 0 and 1, and it just represents how sure the system is that a line in the song is the punchline of a logical argument. Okay, now check this out. We're looking at the data for one song, and right at the 112.2 second mark, the conclusion indicator hits a perfect 1.0, a 1. That means this system is 100% certain that the line being sung at that exact moment is a logical conclusion. And here's where it gets even cooler. At that very same moment, another metric, the syllogism step score, clocks in at 0.3. So what does that tell us? It means the conclusion it just found isn't random. It's part of a bigger argument that's been building. This thing isn't just spotting keywords, it's mapping the entire logical journey of the song. So this all leads to the biggest question of all, right? Why? What's the point? Why would anyone build such a complex system just to score the logical arguments in an AI-generated pop song? What's the end game here? Well, the biggest clue, it turns out, was right in the name the whole time, arete. Arete is an ancient Greek concept. It's a powerful word that means something like excellence or virtue, basically being the best version of something you can be. And suddenly, it all clicks into place. That's exactly what this system is built to do. It's a 3-step process. First, it analyzes the heck out of the song, breaking it into all these little data points. Second, it measures the logical and persuasive structure. And finally, the big one, it uses all that data to grade its excellence, to give it a score for how good it is. So when you put all the pieces together, there's only one conclusion. The Arete format is a system for automated artistic critique. It's an algorithm built to listen to art and then tell you, with a number, whether or not it's good. And that just leaves us with a pretty wild thought to chew on. This system was built to score an AI's art. But if one machine can create the art, and another machine can judge it, where does that leave the human artist in all of this? I mean, if you can actually put a score on creativity, What does it even mean to create something in the first place? All right, today we are cracking open a digital mystery, a really strange and fascinating data bundle that tries to do something that, well, it seems almost impossible. This is our deep dive right inside the Arate format. Just think about this for a second. What if you could actually score a feeling or, measure a metaphor? Could you put a clean, simple number on a paradox? It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, right? Well, it might be closer to reality than any of us think. We've managed to get our hands on this set of files, this data bundle called our REIT format, and it looks like it was built to do exactly that. So let's treat this whole thing like an investigation. We've got the case file right here in front of us, and we're going to unpack the evidence piece by piece to figure out what is really going on here. Okay, so here's our evidence manifest. This is the table of contents from the data bundle, 20 text files in total. And a couple of these immediately jump out at you. Like, look here, a disclosure report. That sounds promising. And this one, rhetoric syntax debug.txt. Now that sounds interesting. So we dig into that disclosure report and boom, we find our subjects. The entire analysis, the whole thing, seems to be centered on 6 unique audio files, 6 songs. Now this is where it gets really good. Look at the naming convention here, at the file names. Every single one starts with the same word, iSinger, AI singer. And that right there is our first major clue that the artist we're dealing with, well, it might not be human. And yep, that's exactly what's happening. The RET format is a deep, deep analysis of 6 songs generated entirely by an artificial intelligence. We are literally looking at the anatomy of an AI's creative output. It's kind of wild. So what is this system even measuring? Well, part of it is pretty normal. The report is full of standard musical stuff. Tempo, key, genre, you know the drill. But then when you look at that rhetoric_syntax file, things get really weird. The system is also scoring things like a syllogism score, a contradiction proxy, and logical density. I mean, these are not music terms. This is stuff from logic and philosophy class. And just to give you a feel for it, on the more conventional side of things, the AI definitely has a type. The report nails its top genres as electropop, synthpop, and alt-pop. So far, so good, right? Pretty standard stuff. But okay, let's get back to the weird stuff, because this is the real heart of the Array format. This is its attempt to score the unseen, to actually quantify the abstract qualities in a song that we normally only feel. And this just shows you the kind of things it's looking for. The data logs are just filled with metrics like these: premise indicator, inference indicator, conclusion indicator. It's literally tracking the building blocks of a formal argument, even assigning a syllogism step score while, get this, looking for contradictions. So here's the absolute kicker. The system isn't just analyzing the music, it's analyzing the words. It's listening for the structure of a logical argument that's embedded inside the song lyrics themselves. Okay, we've got to dive into this because seeing the raw data for yourself is what makes this so absolutely wild. Let's take a peek inside that rhetoric syntax debug file. I know, at first glance, it's just a wall of numbers. It looks like a mess, but each row you see is a tiny segment of a song timed down to the 100th of a second, and each column, that's one of those bizarre rhetorical scores. The level of detail here is just incredible. So to make sense of this, let's just zoom in on one metric, the conclusion indicator. Basically, this is a score from 0 to 1 that represents how confident the system is that a specific line in the song is acting as the punchline to a logical point. And we found a perfect example, right here in the logs for the track called Neon Sovereign Hum. At exactly the 112.2 second mark, the system flags a piece of the lyrics with a conclusion indicator of 1.0, a perfect score. It is absolutely certain it just heard the conclusion of an argument. But it doesn't stop there. For that exact same moment, it also assigns a syllogism step score of 0.3. Now, what that suggests is that it didn't just find a conclusion, but it also understands how that conclusion fits into a bigger multi-step argument. The system is building a complete logical profile of the song, second by second. Insane. Which, of course, brings us to the final question. The big one. Why? What is the purpose of this incredibly detailed, bizarrely logical analysis of AI-generated music? What's it all for? Well, the answer is right there in the name, Arete. It's an ancient Greek word. It refers to excellence or virtue, the idea of something reaching its absolute highest potential. So when you put all the pieces of our little investigation together, the purpose becomes crystal clear. Step 1, you break down a creative work into hundreds of data points. Step 2, you quantify its rhetorical and logical structure. And the final step, step 3, you use all of that data to grade its arete, to assign it a final score for its excellence. That's the verdict. Let's just call it what it is. The Arete format is a system for automated artistic critique. It's an algorithm designed to judge art, not just on how it sounds, but on the logical and persuasive power of its actual message. And that leaves us with a pretty profound final thought. We started by asking if you could put a number on a paradox. But the real question this whole system forces us to ask is this. If creativity itself can be quantified and scored by a machine, what does it truly mean to be an artist?
All right, today we're diving into something pretty weird. It's this mysterious data set that just popped up called the Arete format. And from the looks of it, it's a system built to measure the things we always thought you couldn't measure.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if you could actually put a number on a paradox? How would you even start to score something like that? Like a contradiction or some really deep philosophical idea? It sounds impossible, right?
But that's exactly where this Arete format comes into play. This whole data bundle might just have the answer. So we're going to treat this thing like a digital investigation. Think of this file as our main piece of evidence, and we're going to unpack it clue by clue to figure out what this thing is and what in the world it's trying to do.
All right, first things first. Every investigation starts with the evidence. So let's crack open this digital case file and see what we've got.
Okay, so here's the manifest, the table of contents. And right away, things get interesting. The Arete format is made up of 20 different data files. You see some stuff you might expect, right? Like lyrics transcripts. Makes sense. But then you see these other files. Rhetoric syntax debug? Anomaly windows? Contradiction proxy indicator? Yeah. This is clearly way more than just a simple music analysis.
And here it is, our first big clue. We dug into the disclosure report, and it turns out all 20 of those files, all that complex analysis, it's all focused on just 6 audio inputs. And just look at the file names. They all start with the same word, Isinger. You got Isinger, Neon, Sovereign Hum. Isinger, Neon, Sovereign Paradox. So the big question is, what exactly is an Isinger?
Right, so what's the deal with this Isinger? What is the subject of all this crazy intense analysis? Let's break it down.
Well, the name itself is kind of the giveaway, isn't it? AI singer. We're not talking about a human artist here. The subject of this entire unbelievably detailed analysis is a singer generated by artificial intelligence, and that changes everything. And this really shows you just how deep this rabbit hole goes. On one side, you have your standard musical stuff, right? Tempo, key, genre, totally normal. But then look at the other side. This is what makes the Arete format so bizarre. It's scoring the rhetoric. It's literally trying to find syllogisms, contradictions, and logical conclusions inside the lyrics of an AI singer. Just wild.
Okay, so if it's scoring rhetoric, what's it actually looking for? This is where things get, well, pretty abstract.
So get this, the system isn't just listening to the music, it's reading the lyrics and pulling out core themes. And across all 6 tracks, look what it finds. The top concepts are almost always identity and paradox. Then you get these heavy ideas like futurism and sovereignty. I mean, it's quantifying philosophy. That's what's happening.
And it doesn't even stop there. It goes deeper. The system isn't just scoring what the AI is singing about, it's scoring how it's singing about it. The main styles it picks up on are reflective, poetic, and mantric. It's almost like it's grading the AI on its lyrical style, on its delivery. It's incredible.
All right, let's get granular. We're going to look at the raw evidence now. This is where we can see exactly how this system is thinking second by second.
Okay, I know. At first glance, this is just a wall of numbers, right? This is from that rhetoric syntax debug file. It looks super dense, totally confusing, but buried in all this data is the proof of what this thing is really doing. So let's just pull out one of these columns and focus on that.
So one of the key things it's tracking is something called the conclusion indicator, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a score that pops up when the system thinks a line in the song isn't just a lyric, but is actually the conclusion to a logical argument being made in the song.
And here we go. We pulled this right from the data. At exactly 74.96 seconds into that paradox track, the machine flags a moment with a conclusion score of 1.0, a perfect score. It basically thinks the AI just made a flawless, logical point. This is the smoking gun.
Okay, so let's recap. We have an AI singer. It's being analyzed for its music, its philosophical themes, and the logical structure of its lyrics. So what's the point of all this? Well, the final piece of the puzzle, it's been in the name the whole time.
Arete, that's the name of the format, right? It's an ancient Greek word, and it means excellence or virtue. But it's more than that. It's about achieving your highest potential. Think of it like this. The arete of a knife is its sharpness. The arete of a runner is their speed. It's a measure of ultimate quality, of perfect function.
And that's it. That's the whole purpose right there. The Arete format is a system designed to grade the excellence, the Arete, of AI-generated art. It's a three-step process. First, it analyzes the content, the music and the lyrics. Then it quantifies the rhetoric, the logic, and the style. And finally, it mashes all of that together to spit out a final grade on the artwork's artistic and philosophical merit. It's a report card for AI art.
So, this whole incredibly complex system was built just to score the work of an AI. But that leaves us with a much bigger and maybe kind of unsettling question. If you can build a machine that grades art on how deep its philosophy is, or how solid its logic is, what does that mean for human artists, for our art? If you can put a number on creativity, what does it even mean to be an artist anymore?
Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're basically going on a digital treasure hunt. We've gotten our hands on this new, incredibly detailed data format that claims it can analyze a piece of music down to its very soul. So what happens when you run a song through this machine? Let's find out.
Okay, so what are you even looking at here? At first glance, it looks like a computer just threw up, right? A wall of text and numbers, just comma-separated values that seem totally random. This is a file from something called the Arete format, and believe it or not, it's describing a song. So the big question is, how on earth do we get from this cryptic mess to the melody, the emotion, and the story of the music itself?
All right, so here's our central mystery. We're about to go on a digital archaeological dig to see if we can actually reverse engineer the soul of a song from nothing but raw data.
Okay, let's dive into this. With any great mystery, the data itself usually holds the key. Buried inside this bundle of 20 different text files is the one thing we absolutely need to make sense of it all. We just have to know where to look. So this whole system, the thing that generates all this data, it's called the Arete format. The best way to think of it is like a musical CAT scan. It's designed not just to hear a song, but to create a complete, multi-layered, analytical portrait of an audio file, from its rhythm all the way to its rhetoric. And this is our Rosetta Stone. Seriously. Out of all 20 different files, it's file number 2, the disclosure report, that holds the key. It's basically a human-readable summary that's going to act as our guide through the rest of this digital jungle. Okay, now that we have our guide, let's start dissecting a specific track. We'll kick things off with the basics. The kind of stuff you'd expect any musical analysis to pick up on. First up, the absolute basics, the heartbeat of the track. The system easily pegs the song's tempo, locking it in at a super precise 112.5 beats per minute. I mean, this is a fundamental piece of a song's DNA, and the Arete format just nails it, right out of the gate. But it doesn't just stop at the rhythm, right? It also dives into the song's harmonic structure, estimating its musical key to be F-sharp minor. And what's really important here is that it gives us a confidence score. It's telling us just how sure it is about its own analysis. So this isn't just a wild guess, it's a totally calculated assessment.
Okay, now this is where things get really interesting, especially with how the system handles genre. See, it doesn't just slap a single label on the song and call it a day. No, instead, it calculates the probabilities across multiple genres. So yeah, it thinks it's most likely synth-pop, but it also sees these really strong elements of electropop and even alt-pop. It's a much more nuanced, kind of realistic way of understanding musical style, don't you think?
And it goes deeper still, moving beyond just genre and into emotion. It uses this combination of acoustic and lyrical cues to analyze the likely tone the music is trying to convey. For this particular track, it's picking up on a mix of tense, energetic, and euphoric. Think about that. The machine is literally trying to quantify the song's feeling. All right, we've seen the science, but now we're going to go looking for the soul. Let's go all the way back to that super cryptic file from the beginning and see if we can find the ghost in the machine, the system's analysis of the song's hidden logic.
Okay, get ready, because this single line of data is where things get kinda wild. About 75 seconds into the track, this conclusion indicator just spikes to 1.0. What does that mean? It means the machine isn't just hearing words, it's identifying a moment of logical conclusion in the lyrics. It's claiming to understand the song's argument. That's a huge leap.
And that intelligence, it goes even deeper. The system can actually distinguish between really subtle thematic differences between two similar songs. Just look at this. On the left, one track is tagged with futurism, but on the right, a very similar track swaps that concept out for sovereignty. VAI is picking up on these incredibly nuanced shifts in the lyrics. It's pretty amazing.
Okay, we did it. We cracked the code. We've gone from this completely meaningless wall of text to a deep, multifaceted profile of a song. So the big question is, what does a tool like this actually mean for how we create, how we analyze, and maybe even how we just listen to music?
So let's just recap what we found here. The Arete format is basically creating a sonic fingerprint. It quantifies a song's musical DNA, the tempo, the key. It classifies its probable genre and its emotional tone. And what's most surprising of all, it extracts these abstract lyrical concepts and even detects the logical, rhetorical structure within the words themselves. And all of this leaves us with a fascinating and maybe a slightly unsettling final thought. We've just seen a tool that can deconstruct a piece of art with just incredible precision. So if an AI can learn to read the structure, the emotion, and the argument of a song this deeply, well, how long is it going to be before it uses that knowledge to create something entirely new? What does the future of music even sound like?